Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Psychology and Spirituality, a Bridge to a Better Life discussion. As you may know, our program, the Psychology and Spirituality Weekly Talks, are based on the works by Joanna de Angelis, and we're here with Joanna de Angelis to offer safe space to confront, compare, correlate, and expand spirituality concepts from this psychological lens. It is so good to be here with you, Jussara, to discuss this quite interesting topic full of layers when you start thinking about it. And the topic is happiness. How are you doing?
Hello, everyone. Hello, Marcia. So good to be here again. I'm doing good. I'm feeling happy, and I'm very happy that we are going to be talking about happiness today.
Awesome, awesome. And for all of you who are here with us today, please note this is an invitation for all of us to deep into this exploration of an interplay between individual psychology, spiritual development, and this idea, this pursuit of true happiness. So, as we begin our conversation, Jusara, let's just maybe start by defining what is true happiness. And I'm going to ask you, am I correct to say, to assume that true happiness is not an external pursuit, but this state of inner peace in alignment with one's higher self? And if so, Jusara, if it is a correct assumption, maybe we can spend a few moments talking about this notion that we find in Joanna de Angelis' work, right? And I'm just going to say a quote that struck me when I was reading, which she says, happiness is a state of consciousness. Happiness is a state of conscience, okay? And an inner harmony that can be achieved by connecting with the soul's true purpose. So we talk about consciousness, inner harmony, and purpose. What is she trying to teach us, Jusara? What are your thoughts?
Okay, so this is a very complex, I think, topic because it doesn't matter how we really define happiness if this is not what people are feeling. Depending
Mhm.
on the level of understanding, of spiritual involvement of each one of us, we are going to perceive or to think that happiness is something different. I mean, if we were to, ask people now, what is happiness for you? Or what makes you happy? We would have so many different responses because it's very much normally just related to what I'm lacking now. It can be peace, it can be money, it can be a new job, it can be a new girlfriend, boyfriend, or whatever, you know. But it's very hard to define. We have these definitions that the highly evolved spirits bring to us, and not only that, but also that we learn from psychologists throughout the world for so many times. In terms of when they speak about the ego, they speak about the self, and the ego being representing, like, the infantile side of ourselves, where we are, more connected to things and not necessarily diving deep into what Joanna de Angelis talks about here, that is our consciousness, and trying to understand what truly we truly need, right? And there is this Chinese proverb that I thought, when I was reading all of that and preparing for today, so that we could have this podcast, that it says the following: if you want happiness for an hour, take a nap. If you want happiness for a day, go fishing.
Yeah.
If you want happiness for a year, inherit a fortune. It's so amazing, right? What they are saying here. I mean, even in terms of inheriting a fortune for you to be happy for a year, meaning you probably are not going to to know how to handle that. And finally, it says, if you want happiness for a lifetime, help someone else, meaning
Beautiful, beautiful.
living the ego and as the self, being a conscious being, understanding that true happiness only is going to exist when we have an atmosphere, an environment of happiness around us. So, yes, from the spiritual perspective, as an ideal, and as
Mhm.
Joanna de Angelis tells us, we should pursue this path, which is to be more in control of ourselves and to pay more attention to the lasting things, to be able to allow ourselves to be each time more directed by the self instead of the ego, becoming more conscious of the actions we are putting out in the world, because they are going to there is going to be reaction for every action
Yeah,
that we put out there. But I mean, as a whole, I mean, if we want to define happiness now from uh, 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 our understanding and point of view, it would be very difficult, because even according to the age of the person is going to vary,
that's
and
right.
the,
Hmm.
the needs you are going through at the moment, your current situation, and of course, above all that, your spiritual understanding. And so it's hard, but I think that Joanna de Angelis is giving us all the answers. It's maybe the answers that she provides to us is not necessarily what we want to hear, because
Yeah.
in many cases she says very much what along the lines of what Buddhism tells us. The
Hmm.
ultimate passions is only ultimate happiness only is achieved by detaching from all the passions, needs, and wants of life. You
Yeah.
know, uh, there is, this thing that people say, as we cannot know for sure, that is the Socratic way of shopping. That's how
Yeah.
I call it. When you go shopping, and like people, they say, we don't know if it's real or not, but when that happened, when he would be strolling along the roads there of Greece, where there were stores and all that, Socrates would look at those things and say, "Oh my God, look at so many things that I don't need."
I love it. I really do, right? And
Right?
this is our life, right?
Uh-huh.
Look at life. Jussara, look at life. We've never been in a day and age with so much technology, so many assets that we can have, resources, so much data, information, and yet we can look at it the same way. Look at all this that I really don't need it, right? Very interesting.
Yeah, and there is one other thing that we have in the Declaration of Independence, because it's
Hmm.
the necessity of happiness was introduced by Thomas Jefferson, formally in the Declaration of Independence, when it talks about us having the unalienable rights, and
Yes,
some of them being, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
that's
So
right.
it's a pursuit.
Yeah. So this leads us to this idea. Number one, that the definition of happiness is a relative term, right?
Mhm.
There is no absolute happiness in this stage of spiritual maturity that we all are in. in living in a world that is very much material in its essence. So it's really important for us not only to understand that relative aspect of our own definition of what it is that makes me happy. Am I happy now? Are we all happy now? Right? And whenever we say that, we kind of pause and reflect. And it's very hard for you to say, am I happy? Am I contented? Do I have joy in my life? Those are peripherally the same connected words, but very different concepts. But, anyways, I wanted to say here, Jussara, that it's important that we all acknowledge that somehow most of us, and we're talking about Western world mostly, but us that were brought up in the Western world, we are mostly taught that happiness is achieved through an external, say, accomplishment or an external desire, goal, or fulfillment of something that we set as a challenge, right? And and if we think about it, it can be, oh, my child went to an Ivy League school, or I got married, or I don't know, examples that come to mind as milestones to most of our lives. Um, we were able to get the car of our dreams, the house of our dreams, and so on and so forth. But can we truly say that we get a sense of satisfaction when those needs are met? And I think you mentioned already that this is very hard, but can we talk further about the whole concept of material elements or desires that are created in us, and we go, sometimes we spend a lifetime pursuing something only to find that it's not it. The proverbial this ladder that we that we climb, professionally speaking, right? The
Mhm.
professional ladder, and we spend the whole life climbing the ladder only to find out that it's on the wrong wall. Meaning to us here in this talk about psychology and spirituality is that we're climbing the ladder, but on the wrong wall, not spiritual, not psychological maturity, but on a wall that is mostly and only material in its aspects. What else can we talk about? Are there some examples that we can bring to everyone who's here today, Jusada?
Yeah, first again, I think that we should, meditate, ponder a little bit about the concept.
Okay, appreciate that.
Talk about the concept of happiness, about the
Hmm.
concept of love.
Yeah.
And I do believe that we do not have or happiness and love as it really represents for higher realms in this world. So I think both of them we can have we're getting there, right? We're working to get there, but we don't know exactly what happiness is. We will define according to our desires. Sometimes you see, we say, "Oh, I'm so happy because I ate this piece of chocolate and it was delicious." So, or because I had a relationship, or sex with someone, and we think that the pleasure, the material
Yeah.
pleasure, the bodily pleasure,
It's sensorial, right?
yeah,
Pleasure. Yeah.
it's happiness, but it's not, right?
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
a pleasure. It is a joy, momentaneous joy that, yeah, perhaps we want to repeat to have those sensations, but it's not that. It's not without a motive that Jesus quoted the book of Ecclesiastes when he said, "Happiness is not of this world," meaning, can we not be happy? No, but according to the level of involvement that we are, we still feel, search, like you were saying, for happiness in a different address. So
Mhm.
I think I remember I used to have that
Yeah,
a little piece of wood that was written, "It's sad to suffer in life, but to suffer in Paris is better."
I love it. Let's us all go to Paris,
So
and
let's
their
go to
suffering is
Paris.
a little different, right?
But I mean, it's not a place, it's not a thing that is
Yeah.
going to give us or to deliver to us lasting happiness. Lasting
Mhm.
happiness, and even, this, like I was talking about the concept of love. The
Yeah.
Greeks define, the levels of love in seven different words. I don't even know. Don't ask me to repeat all of them because I don't remember all of them, but it's the agape, the phyllis, and some
Yeah.
others, which I think it's great because it's exactly that. We are getting there, and to become, or in a condition
Yeah.
where we will be able to, um, each time, feel deeper and deeper, and working in the more in the feelings. There is in this chapter of the book, I think it's the conscious being. I'm looking
Yes.
at the book now, where Joanna de Angelis talks about, us, little by little, getting this understanding about,
Mhm.
what true happiness is,
Yeah.
and not being connected necessarily to everything working out in your life, and placing it in a situation
Mhm.
where she says we are constantly progressing, but for
Yeah.
us to constantly progress, we are going to be facing challenges. Is
Yes.
the process of growing, of being from being a baby to a toddler to, a child, adolescence, young age, and so on, and
Mhm.
I think we have to think about those things,
Yeah.
and not to place happiness in, really immaterial things. There is this, once I was researching about this topic, and I came
Yeah.
about information from the positive psychologist,
Yeah.
where they say that they have been asking this holy grail questions: what actually makes people happy,
Yeah. Tell me. Tell me.
right? And they say that money, love, and health, according to their research, only affect our level of happiness by up to 10%.
Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah.
So interesting, because they said it doesn't matter. So, scientifically speaking, you can increase your happiness, no matter what your life circumstance is. If you say, I don't have money, I don't have love, I don't have health, but
Yeah.
it's, you can be happy, you can feel happy. 10% is barely nothing. And there is
Yeah.
another research that they did here. It's a bit old, but they say that since 1947, the
Mhm.
level of happiness has not significantly increased.
Yeah. And
Due,
and and I imagine, just for clarification, that those researches, whatever they're from,
Mhm.
it's the self perceived levels of happiness,
Yeah.
right? Which
Mhm.
is which brings us this whole paradox of, if we don't know the definition, I'm thinking out loud here, Josara, if we
Mhm.
don't know the definition of happiness truly is, and not at a surface level, but at a deepest level of awareness of what is my source of happiness, how
Mhm.
can I tell you, if you ask me, are you happy?
Mhm.
And you can say, oh, I'm healthy,
Mhm.
right? I have a partner that I love very much, and I have all the money that I need, And yet there's this, like you said, it's only 10%, right? I may have everything, and still there's this enormous gap that somehow I am aware of the gap, but not aware of the levels of satisfaction that I should be otherwise, right?
Yeah, and that is really deep because when we think about that, and Joanna de Angelis even comment, uh,
Mhm.
and it's a very hard comment for us to digest,
Uh,
how much guilt we
yeah,
have. And
yeah,
even when we have all those achievements, somehow many of us will feel like we do not deserve, and we may sabotage, our happiness, let's say, all those
yeah,
things, and that we will impose a rhythm of work or a lifestyle that we think that can compensate for what I think I am undeserving. But I
yeah,
think that the best way that we could find out what brings us really happiness is by, and this has to do with being completely sincere with yourself in
yeah.
self-assessment.
And
Oh,
that sense of courage and authenticity,
mhm,
that this, as you said, this transparency, this sincerity to look at oneself and embrace the good, the bad, and the ugly, right?
mhm,
All the best parts of me, all the not so good, and all the really bad ones
mhm,
that I still demonstrate because I'm still an evolving spirit, and to be able to look at it and embrace it. I am okay despite the fact that I am sometimes very impatient,
mhm,
or I don't have the discipline that I desire, so on and so forth. So I think it's very important for us to what you said now, to be aware of the trap that guilt brings to
mhm.
us and enslaves us, despite the fact that we're doing so much and we're still very unhappy, and in many cases immersed in pain because of that guilt. Don't you think, Josana?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to propose a homework for everyone.
Okay, let's do this.
Say everyone, I'm including myself, which is
Okay.
truly be mindful, right? Mindful in your actions, your thoughts, the
Hmm.
events that occur in your life, to try to recognize when you really something warms your heart.
Ah, love it. Hmm.
What it's going to be, right? Sometimes just by looking at a babe smiling,
Yeah.
it brings you, it's not pleasure, it's not joy, it's this, close encounter
Hmm.
with what happiness can truly be.
So it's
It,
like almost like we find ourselves meeting a spark of light
yeah.
in little moments that can be, like you said, just looking at a baby smile or many other things, but those things that gives that spark of joy, of happiness.
But
Okay, what else should we do in this
this
homework?
requires really authenticity on our part, like you said
Yeah,
before, and requires us to be paying attention. Because,
yeah.
you may say, oh no, I felt so happy because I went out for dinner with my
Mhm.
friends. Was it the dinner, the going out, the restaurant, what you had uh, for a meal, or was it really, the relationship of being with friends and laughing and talking about old time,
A
which
sense
is
of belonging, right? A sense of belonging, to be in that nest of love and affection,
because it's
right?
different.
Yeah.
Or like, there is a phrase here, that I like very much is that is a quote by Eleanor Roosevelt that she says that you since you get more joy out of giving to others, you should put a good deal of thought into the happiness that you are able to give. So, and sometimes we will see that, little acts of charity,
Mm-hmm.
being compassionate towards
Mm-hmm.
one, uh, give us a sense of fulfillment of some strange feeling to some people. And
Mm-hmm.
so those are the things that Joanna de Angelis recommends
Mm-hmm.
a lot. It can be just to go and listen to music that can put you in a good state of mind, or
Mm-hmm.
a stroll in the park, or it doesn't need to be big things as compared to other things that are more related to just the material aspect of life. And we can see as soon as you are promoted in your job, uh, you feel happy for a week, and then you start cursing it because now there's so much more responsibility, and you don't think you are getting paid what you deserve. And now I'm coveting a different kind of promotion. And
Yeah.
so, when we are talking about just about material, there's never
Yeah.
going to be enough. We are this kinds of human beings that we still.
Yeah, I'm reminded of an interesting book. This is quite old. I read maybe 20 plus years ago, called The Culture of Complaint, which is a very interesting concept, by the way. It talks about North America, specifically the US, as this, uh, culturally speaking, this environment where we complain, right? And it's the hypothesis is when we complain, it's very interesting here, Josada. It pushes to look for ways to get better, right?
Mm,
But when we complained at the same time, we are not exercising the entire psychology of gratitude that Joanna de Angelis has an entire book about it.
mhm,
We are against this sense of satisfaction and gratitude because you only look at the absence or a sense of scarcity versus a sense of abundance. But, anyways, we are talking a lot about material happiness, right? And we cannot forget about spiritual happiness. And I want to say here, if you don't mind, just if we shift a little bit our conversation today, because if you think about it, right? If this material well being is a component of us feeling a sense of stability, a sense of our security needs being met, our personal and perhaps even spiritual explorations. Does it mean, and this is more for us to reflect upon, does it mean that we need to renounce material comforts to be able to achieve spiritual fulfillment? Is this even true from the Christian spiritual teachings, right? And if we think about it, just tuck that into our the back of our minds, because we confuse, right? Do I need to completely detach myself, maybe a little bit of Socrates in the stalls of the market, right? All the things I don't need.
yeah.
But is this what Jesus really wanted from us? A complete detachment, or do we want to say that in an age where there's so much offerings, we are trapped by an unquenched desire for more? Okay,
Mm,
tuck in the back of our minds, because I thought we can also introduce here to everyone this discussion about what Maslow's hierarchy of needs and happiness is all about. So, for all of you who are here with us who may not remember, I know all of us studied it, but if you don't remember quite what Abraham Maslow, uh, who he was and what he did, he developed this hierarchy of needs, which is a concept typically represented. I'm going to make my pyramid with my hands, right? Like a pyramid with the most fundamental needs, the basic needs at the very bottom. So it's the larger base and the higher or more complex needs on the at the very top. So when Maslow, who created this model, discussed discussed happiness, he argued that all of us, Jusada, can experience true fulfillment and happiness only when their lower level needs are met. So that's why I said what we heard from Socrates and then later from Jesus, that's stuck in the back of our mind because Maslow now comes in and says, dude, Jussara, Marcia, everyone out there, you cannot be happy if you don't have a place to sleep or the minimum level of nutrition or nourishment or like clothes, etc. So he says you have to meet those basic needs, and only when they're met you are able to go in that pyramid, go up a level toward the highest, which is self actualization. This is Maslow's language. And that highest level of human development. So he brings this idea that happiness, like we mentioned here before, is a nuanced, you know, concept. It's relative. The higher you go, the happier you are in the context of our material experience as human beings. He Jussara, Maslow suggests here that yes, happiness is closely tied to the idea of fulfillment of your basic needs, surviving, right? But at the same time, it's not only surviving that leads you to happiness, which I think is an interesting thought for us to discuss, right? If I have food and a shelter and protection and a job, that's not enough. Like you said, it's maybe 10%. So he said, you need to have that, but also seek for actualizing our potential. And that is interesting because now I think we're talking a little bit the language of Joanna de Angelis, right? Where she talks about inner peace, but also fulfillment, addressing some of the areas that you can develop and serve, etc. But back to Maslow, he says happiness is this dual goal of not just avoiding pain and suffering, discomfort, or even achieving material success, but balancing those two so that we have stability enough so that we can pursue whatever. And that goes to the what you mentioned of the Constitution of the United States, right? The inalienable right to pursue happiness. So, Ju, back to you now. Can we talk about these ideas? And I was even thinking because we're almost getting to the end. Let's not forget to talk about perhaps how that then happiness or concept of true happiness involves overcoming the ego, right? Or not just overcoming, but aligning the ego with our spiritual self. Can we talk? I put a lot of elements here, but can we talk a little bit more about material success, spiritual success, ego, and spiritual self?
Yeah, sure. While you were talking, I was thinking about the Spirit's book by Alan
Uh,
Kardec.
Mm.
And there is a whole session dedicated to trying to understand happiness. For those who are not familiar with this book, the Spirit's book, was written by Alan Kardec. Actually, he organized questions that were presented to mediums that would be receiving uh, replies from spirits, and he would be sending that to so many different mediums in different places, and he would be analyzing all of that to see whether they were in tune with each other or not. And so that was the result of this book, and the rise of spiritism in the middle of the 19th century in France, is starting with the phenomena that was happening here in the US, also
Yeah.
mid of the 19th century with the Fox sisters. Uh,
Mm.
they were getting in touch with spirits. And so one question that Kardec posed to the spirits and got the replies from different places, according to the methodology, the scientific methodology that he was using to test if spirits and mediums from different places without knowing each other would be giving, kind of the same reply. And so one of the questions, question 922, it ends by Allan Kardec saying, is there a common standard of happiness for all? And the answer the spirit gave was, for material existence, it
Mm.
is the possession of all that is necessary. So it's perfectly in tune with what Maslow was explaining, that if
Yeah.
you have the bare necessities of life, how can you think about something else? I mean, your body will be craving food and sleep, and if we are talking about living under the poverty line here, is living under the poverty line. And unfortunately, there is a huge percentage of people in the world that live in this condition. How can they be concerned with something else if their struggle is to survive,
Yeah.
physically survive, and I mean, go through all that? But he says that for the moral life, what is happiness? It is a good conscience and a faith in the future. A faith in the future, meaning you have time, you have other opportunities, you will have the possibilities of acquiring, and go after your dreams, no matter how pipe dreams it may seem to be for you at the moment. So, but now a good conscience, which is something that we should ask ourselves: was I a good person today? Can I really put my head on my pillow and sleep well tonight?
So,
Uh,
folks, this is the second homework today.
yeah,
Tonight, when you go to sleep, ask yourself those questions.
I mean, and this is a process of learning, right? And
Yeah.
I can tell to myself, yeah, I mean, most of the day, but there was something that if I could rewrite this day, perhaps I would not have done or thought this way, right? Or I would have changed course. And this is why we have, a new day coming up so that we can do better.
Yes.
And in question 933, he says the following that I think is very important: the spirits. People are usually unhappy because of
Mhm.
the importance that they attach to things of this
Yeah.
world. If
Yeah.
they would raise themselves above the narrow circle of the material life and raise their thoughts towards the infinite, which is their destiny, the
Yeah.
vicissitudes of human existence would seem petty and childish, like the sadness of a child who
Yeah.
suffers the loss of a toy that represented his or her supreme happiness. So if we, from an outside point, we could look really at ourselves, and I mean, we would see that whining child, right, complaining about something that is so unimportant. And sometimes, like I say, we have this ability that we have to lose. Another exercise, which is we just focus on what is negative in our lives.
Yeah.
Seems that it catches all our attention. If there
All
is
of our energy. Yeah. Yeah.
uh, energy, and like that black dot in a white board, right? I just see the black dot, and everything, it doesn't represent even 1% of the whiteboard, but
Yeah.
my attention is all there, and I lose and undervalue the 99% of all things, good things that are happening, because we allow that to become to envelop us in this negative energy, in
Hmm.
this
Hmm.
somber state of of emotion. And
Hmm.
of course this is destructive. And we will always be facing challenges. There is always going to be a black dot in our
Yeah.
whiteboard.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I really appreciate what you're saying here, and wanted to maybe, because you mentioned and I mentioned, and we did not really wrap up some of the thoughts also regarding this alignment between ego and self, right? And it's important for us to understand that true happiness is it's that sense of balance. Inner peace is an expression of this balance between our ego, which is the personality, right? The consciousness of our persona in this life, and our spiritual self, our spirit that transcends this existence.
Mhm.
And when we think about that, it's important to perhaps also reflect upon the fact that the ego is a mechanism to help us survive in this world, and as such is really driven by exactly what you said. And Alan Kardec's The Spirit's book is telling us not to do, right? The ego is driven by personal desires, attachments, and those are the ephemeral end results of efforts, because they're only material, and eventually will lead to a sense of frustration and dissatisfaction, right? And I'm thinking, you rattled a number of things that we want to accomplish, and to me, the thing is so funny, just out of why. But to me, it's the idea of when we are wanting to buy a new car, the car of our dreams, and it may have taken 5 years to get the money, blah blah blah, and you get it. And I'm thinking as a young adult, right? It's like your first car, brand new, and you get in, and the smell of leather, and you're so happy. And truly, that happiness
Mhm.
dilutes, evades within a week, right? We become now ready, full of frustration, because now we are pulling ourselves into our next desire or object of desire. So it's important for us to think about it. True happiness, which is the subject of today's discussion, is always about how we can transcend the demands of our ego, so that we can align with the sacred, the divine, that universal self, right? So when Allan Kardec in the Spirit's book teaches about happiness or unhappiness, it's important for us to also perhaps think about that. Once we recognize the illusions created by the ego, we are able to, now that we identify them as ephemeral, uh, illusory, like there's an illusion aspect to it, then we can say, I am free from all the chains of materialism. Just like Socrates said, I can see all the things I don't need.
Mhm.
Right. So Joanna de Angelis, and I'm going to stop here, just I'd love to hear from you. But Joanna de Angelis, in a quote about ego, she says the ego is a barrier to happiness. Only by transcending it, as I said, we can experience the peace and joy of our true nature, right? When we understand that a lot that is produced by our ego is all an illusion. Now I can look at myself again. You mentioned that earlier, Josara. I can look at myself with love, with compassion, with truth, right? In transparency, and most important, with courage to embrace all that I am, including all my flaws. What are your thoughts, Josara, before we close today's discussion?
Yeah, one thing that I think is very important for us to make clear is that we are not saying that this is going to happen overnight, and
Uh-huh.
we will be able to completely detach from material things, even
Mhm.
if they are not necessary, right? But the thing is, the whole thing is the process, and
Yeah.
what we are trying to achieve here, very much like when Joanna de Angelis says, is not to completely bury the ego, but to have a balance between the ego and the self. There is
Mhm.
this photograph that I saw once that it is written, "The key of life is balance," and the
Yeah.
it represents it. It we are in a beach, some place, and I don't know where, and there is this bowl beach, and all the colors and all of that, and there is an elephant with just one leg balancing his entire body on top of this little bowl.
Oh.
And so the key of life is balance.
Uh-huh.
I mean, if sometimes an image can strike us so well, right? And this image of this elephant balancing itself in a small little ball, it was amazing, and something that always stayed here with me. And I think this is what we are trying to achieve here. Uh,
Yeah.
this is a pathway to happiness. And there is one quote by Abraham Lincoln that he says that most people are as happy as they make up their minds to be. So we are in control.
Yeah.
So let us make up our minds in the sense of, let me be happy with what I already have. With,
Mhm.
I mean, okay, it can be bringing me more joy, more pleasure in life, the certain things. Okay, but just as long as you remember that in spite of desiring them, you don't need them, and you don't need that to survive, and you don't need that to live a happy life.
Yeah.
So I think that this is one of the process, this of going into this path gradually. It's knowing that nothing that is material is going to follow with us when it's time for us to say our "see you soon" planet.
Yes. Yes.
And of
Yes.
course, I'm a reincarnationist, and I'm going to say "see you soon."
Yeah.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Yes, I love it. I love it. Yeah.
Like Benjamin Franklin wrote in his epitaph, right? That is, he's going to be back in a better version, gilded writings, and etc. So, yeah, so let's think about it. It's a transition process, but as long as we try to do those exercises of paying attention, be mindful. What made you truly feel this warm sensation in your day to day. And then try to replicate more occasions where you can have more experiences of this kind of nature. And I think little by little we will be transitioning to a much more balanced and healthier life and lifestyle. And in this way, we can say that we are going to be approaching, what happiness truly mean, right?
Love it. I love it. We are at time, unfortunately. So I want to say that for all of you who are here with us, we thank you. Thank you for being here. If this is the first time you are here listening to this program, please remember, as I mentioned earlier, the Psychology and Spirituality Weekly Talks are based on the works by Joanna de Angelis, and we hope that you're able to make some connections, maybe expand some ideas, some spirituality concepts, and really juxtapose them from this psychological lens. We want to take a moment to also thank our sponsors, Mansão do Caminho, United States Spiritist Federation, the International Spiritist Council, and AME Brazil. AME Brazil, AME, is the Brazilian arm of the Medical Spiritist Association. Hope you enjoyed our discussion today and hope to see you next time. Bye, everyone.